to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Leger Douzable joins us as he does every single Wednesday, and we'll dive into some deep dive topics as we do every single Wednesday and get to your mailbag questions in a little bit. But first, in the first off the ball segment, I want to talk about Derwin James.
Yep.
Getting his suspension upheld this week after the high hit he delivered to Pat Freiermuth this past weekend because of a pattern of behavior. The NFL says, we actually went back and watched some of them this morning. And it's fair to say, but the strike zone for a guy like Derwin James is just higher than the NFL wants right now, I think is an accurate assumption of seeing his previous few years and the hits he's had. What do we think of this, though? Because obviously now the Chargers going to the Chiefs this week, no Derwin James,
like what we
maybe
say.
No Justin Herbert,
probably.
No Rashawn Slater, no Joe Alt, maybe no Joey Bosa.
Yeah.
Does the NFL just love the Chiefs here?
We'll get back to the Chargers in a minute, and that's going to be a fun one to talk about, Chargers Chiefs. But we got to talk about this guy, Derwin James.
Yeah.
And we took a look at all the penalties this guy's accrued over the course of the last few years. And the first thing I want to say is I love the way the guy plays football.
100%.
We love the way the guy plays football. And you were talking about him meeting the challenge of playing the Steelers
For sure.
and matching their intensity. And that's what he did. He was out there doing that. Now, the most recent hit, the one that is in question recently, the reason for the upheld suspension is because it was probably the dirtiest looking one, the one that ended up looking like it had intent to the head and neck area. The other hits that we see is a guy going same knee, same shoulder. He's playing the game of football the way that football fans love it to be played. Big hits. I don't think it's intentional, but the one thing that you and I noticed, he never really goes low, which we can appreciate.
And we can appreciate it because I've talked to many receivers, I'm sure you have in the league, and they say it all the time. I'd rather you hit me up high than down low. Case in point, I think Kirby Joseph was from the Detroit Lions. A lot of receivers don't like him because he does go low. And we saw a few tight ends go down. Matter of fact, I think it was Tyler Higbee last year in that game.
Stafford said, "You're dirty."
He went low. So, like, Derwin James is going high. And, again, maybe you don't like the intent and where he hit you. And I get it, right? We're trying to protect everybody's brain because, there's life after football, obviously. But to your point, he was playing the Steelers, synonymous with being a physical team. He wanted to match that intensity. I don't think there was no ill will towards Pat Freiermuth at all. I just think when you look at the rest of the game, he was just flying around the football field. Like, he literally was the guy that was popping out on tape versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I get it. You're trying to make the game a lot safer. But, again, when you talk to a lot of receivers, and I would question the NFL to go do this, to have these conversations with receivers and ask them, like, when you're coming across the middle, would you rather get hit up high or would you rather get hit up low? For the majority of receivers I've talked to, they say, always hit me up high.
Yeah,
right?
it's like
because
interceptions too.
And again, you want to protect your brain, right? But a knee literally can cost you 2-3 years or maybe even your career.
Yeah, and when as an offensive lineman, I remember turnovers, sudden changes, where an offensive lineman goes from watching the pass to turning and become a safety. Sometimes those defensive linemen, they light you up. You don't see them coming. And what better opportunity to get back at a guy who's been trying to block you the whole game than to light you up? I always appreciated the guys that went high instead of going low because our biggest fear, we wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night thinking about our legs getting chopped. So you get hit up high, you live to play another down, and you can run back off the field and say, man, that was close.
Yeah, this is why I love this pod, because one conversation can take you to something else, right? You were talking about guys going low, right? And they've outlawed a lot of those blocks in regards to offensive linemen. Now, they can still cut on the backside as long as a defensive lineman isn't engaged with another one, right? The thing that irks me as a defensive lineman, right? Cornerbacks used to be able to chop down offensive linemen. I know you used to hate that.
In space.
Right? So now you're talking about a 185 to 200 pound guy literally taking on a block from a guy that's 300 plus pounds, maybe 320,
moving
in space,
at an illegal speed in a school zone.
But yet on a split zone, a tight end that weighs 250 pounds can go low on a defensive end that's 250 pounds. It's utterly ridiculous. My thing is, if you talk about player safety, make it equal all the way across the board. right? I saw one hit this past weekend from a tight end on a split zone that I ain't gonna lie, I probably would have got a penalty after that play because that was a punk move by him doing that. Like the ball was going the other way and he came back on a split zone because he didn't want to stay up high and block, and he cut the defensive end when the defensive end was looking at the tackle going down. Like that's ludicrous to me. My thing is, you want to get mad at Derwin James for hitting guys up high? Take those blocks out of the game as well.
You know what? And the reaction to a lot of these low hits from defensive linemen, and we've seen it in years past. We saw a tight end tear his knee up because of a reactionary cut by a defensive lineman, saw split zone, cut the tight end. Now he's on the ground, and now everybody's got their hands up in the air. Maybe just get rid of it at the line of scrimmage.
Correct. And I'm so glad you brought that up because literally we would talk about that in the meetings, right? If they're going to continue to cut us on the backside.
Cut their ass.
First play, you set precedent. You go cut him. I guarantee that tight end stays up the rest of the game.
It's funny that the same conversations are being held in both the O-line and the D-line rooms the night before the meeting. First play of the game, we are going to cut him so hard. He'll never forget it for the next 70.
I do, though, think it's an interesting conversation that,
we got a tangent.
They're trying to improve player safety. This is what it is. They're trying to change the strike zone, but it really is only hurting defensive players' pocketbooks.
100%.
Right? There's no offensive players getting these suspensions. No one does like a
Come on, leave us alone, man.
I'm just saying, like they
already care about points scored.
Get it tilted that way, and then for all the fines, all the suspensions, like it ain't the offensive guys who get these suspensions. So I do think, next CBA, whatever,
because the game wouldn't happen without offensive linemen and receivers.
Get on the horn, get in there and complain because you guys are being targeted by the NFL right now. But I do think, for Derwin James, just if you go back and you do watch, like they are trying, right or wrong, to remove the high strike zone.
Correct.
It's not necessarily, coming in violently with the shoulder. It's coming in with that shoulder to the head and neck area. And so with as much as he's done it in recent years, that's why
it's a trend.
Yeah.
But same knee, same shoulder. It's just a clean football. It's a sweet football hit. It's what they tell you to do to trap people too.
The guy that upholds those suspensions and looks at them might have been questioned as the dirtiest player ever. That's why I think again, you can change. Obviously, he's grown. He realizes some of those things he did when he was playing shouldn't be allowed in the game right now. But it's just crazy to me to think that, and I got no ill will towards John Wayne. It's just funny that he's guy.
He's an OG. He's a triple OG.
He's
but
the guy making the decision.
He played a different millennium of football than these guys are playing now, and he's in charge of dishing out the punishments. And
he would have been.
Yeah,
he would have been out of there.
The meme is like this. The meme that I always see is this guy is in charge of upholding the rules, and it's him like absolutely spear diving over a pile into somebody's chest
after the play was
over. Different game, but it is funny though that it happens right before the Chiefs game, of course. And so just more fodder for every fan that thinks.
You mean the number one in the Pete Prisco power ranking Chiefs? Yep, that Chiefs game.
All right, we're going to get to our deep dives here in just a second. First, going to take a quick little break.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
All right, Deep Dive Wednesdays, where we talk whatever we want to talk about. We both come with our assignments. We come to present them to the class. So, Leger, what do you want to discuss here on today's show?
There's been a lot of great storylines in the NFL. The Minnesota Vikings, obviously, with B-Flow, Brian Flores, and his defenses and how they've caused quarterbacks and offensive coordinators headaches. There's also the New Orleans Saints, the first 2 weeks of the season, a little bit back to reality, week 3 versus the Philadelphia Eagles. But my question, or what I want to ask in the deep dive, I want to do is, why is nobody talking about the Seattle Seahawks? Like, this team has been, I don't even want to say a dark horse for me, because I've been trying to tell people this is a legit team in regards to making a run in the playoffs. When you look at it, yes, anytime you get a new head coach, people say it's going to take an acclimation period. But when you look at this team, offensively, they were already set. Right. And then you add Ben Grubbs to that offense. We saw what he did in Washington last year with Michael Penix and the slew of receivers that they have. Well, if you look at Seattle, it's kind of built the same way with the 3-headed monster at receiver that they have. But they also add a physical run game. Now, Kenneth Walker has been out, But I mean, my guy Zach Charbonnet, good Lord, the way the way he was running the pill on Sunday versus the Miami Dolphins, they'll be like, take your time getting back. Now it'll be great when both of them are back. But right now, make sure you're healed up because Zach Charbonnet is carrying the load. And then I've been saying this for the last 2 years, and maybe, Mac, you can back me up on this. I don't believe there's been a quarterback in the league that has made more perfect throws than Geno Smith. Like, the gonads on him on some of these throws is utterly ridiculous. I remember last week versus Miami. Pressure comes, he evades the pressure, steps up into the pocket. Kendall Fuller has his back turned to DK Metcalf on the sideline. He literally puts the ball over top of Kendall Fuller's head.
Gives him a haircut.
You know how disrespectful that is? Like, nobody makes more big-time throws than Geno Smith. Now, big game this week, Detroit Lions, right? Now, let's not forget, Seattle went up to Detroit last year and actually won. So they're very familiar going up there and winning. And I think the biggest issue for Seattle last year was on the defensive side. Like, they gave up a ton of yards, a ton of points. But you bring in a defensive-minded coach, and yes, Pete Carroll was a defensive-minded coach. But I think you just influx, you bring in some new energy with Mike McDonald and the way he's able to have essentially positionless football, right? Like, guys play multiple positions on that defense. You never know who's playing the slot. You never know who's playing in. Like, Draymond Jones essentially was an inside guy last year. He's playing all outside this year, right? He's moving Leonard Williams around. He kind of got banged up, him and Byron Murphy. Hopefully they're all right going further on in the season. But I also love that Tyreek Woolen seems like he's found himself again, because he struggled last year on defense for the Seattle Seahawks. And Devin Witherspoon is going to be Devin Witherspoon. He's going to be a perennial All-Pro every single year. And I think Julian Love was one of the most underrated signings last year for this team. The way he's been able to use him, move him to slot, move him to middle safety, have him in the box. Like, this team is legit. Now, this is a big test for them this week, but people need to start talking about the Seattle Seahawks.
You're preaching to the choir for me. I picked them to win the division. So I thought before the season this team was for real. Now I think the couple big things here. One, who they've played. Broncos, Patriots, Dolphins without Tua. That's obviously not like super inspiring from a scheduling perspective. Plus, they're kind of stuck in that 4 p.m. window usually. And people are out asleep on their couch by that
far
point.
From us, they fly Alaska Airlines. Like,
Probably.
It's so far.
Alaska Air.
No one's watching it. But I do think this week, should they go into Detroit, beat the Lions?
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to start talking about, they are real deal contenders in the NFC. And I do think they are. And it's because of this defensive turnaround. They're currently 4th in points per game against defensively, 9th in points per game offensively. They are really playing good football. And especially this defense side of the ball and the secondary. I love what they're doing, like you said, moving guys around so much more than before. Last year was Witherspoon slot, Julian Love deep. It's like this year, those guys are versatile. And you're seeing that versatility from them. Like, Julian Love was a college corner. He played outside corner at Notre Dame. He has a skill set that isn't just stuck as a deep sort of half sort of player, deep middle sort of player. He can do a lot of different things. And they're finally tapping into that with the Seattle defense. And then they've added a bunch to this defensive line. And they had added a bunch in recent years in terms of young guys who are now flourishing, and guys like Boye Moffitt. So yes, there truly is. I think people are going to, after this weekend, and maybe they don't beat the Lions, but I think they hang tough with them to the point where we're talking about the Seahawks team is like, not only just, a good story at 3-0, they're probably the favorites at this point to win the West.
That's incredible. I mean, it's just incredible the things that Geno has been through in his career to be in the situation where we can kind of take him for granted in terms of what he does every week. To your point about making perfect passes, I was listening to Rodgers yesterday on some guy's show, popular guy's show, and he was talking about Josh Allen's performance and what he saw from him and how he was able to deliver perfect footballs and the difference between a ball that's a bit behind or on the hands or out in front on, let's say, a drag route. And the difference is tackle at the point of the catch or touchdown. And when you're talking about Geno Smith making perfect passes, he not only does that, he's got great receivers on the outside and true balance now. When you think about this guy coming from the University of Washington, I love their offense with Rome and Penix. It was fun. It was it was a confident offense. It was almost like watching those Commanders the other night where it's like, let's give our guys opportunities to make chunk plays. That's what they believe. And I love the Mike McDonald stuff. His defense has been fun to watch. And I think it's true balance. Often it's I look at Chicago. They don't have a true offensive mind in the building, in my opinion. Seattle, they have balance, both sides, checks and balances, and they have stars on both sides of the roster. So they are a great team.
You're the Shane Waldron fan?
I mean, you should have heard the guys talking about him that left Seattle last year.
Yeah.
Like if you go listen to the quotes of these players, they're like, good luck. Good luck. Anytime a guy says good luck and doesn't say he sucks, I mean, it almost says he sucks more. Tell me how you feel. Tell me how you really feel.
To put some numbers to those, Geno Smith, he was first in terms of next-gen stats, completion percentage over expectation back in 2022, sixth last year. So right up at the top of the league. I think very underrated as quarterback. And what they're doing this year is they're creating so much more space in the passing game. I think last year they tried to beat guys with scheme, just like either one-man routes or one, half-field sort of reads. They're giving Geno the entire picture.
Full gambit, yeah.
He really can go anywhere with it, and they're doing a lot of that, and they're still succeeding even with a bad offensive line. I think that may come back to bite them.
Interior is tough.
Against better D-lines. We'll see how they fare against this Detroit Lions defensive line this week, but that's my big worry is I love what they're doing offensively, but it's going to be tough for them to put together drives with that O-line right now, especially that interior. So
didn't we just see some advanced analytics I sent you yesterday that stated that the Minnesota Vikings were essentially like
one of the worst, but
one of the worst teams.
They don't get into obvious pass.
We got to make sense of that.
So, all right. Kyle, what's your deep dive?
Okay, my deep dive. I was just sitting there watching on Twitter yesterday. I was watching some of the clips of Andrew Thomas versus Myles Garrett. And going into the game versus the Giants, the Cleveland Browns megastar Myles Garrett was dealing with not one, but 2 foot injuries. He's dinged up right now, as they would say. He's a little banged up. He's not injured. He's hurt. And, I picked the Giants for the fact that I thought Myles Garrett was going to be at half speed. And if what I saw on film was Myles Garrett at half speed, the conversations you and I have quietly upstairs every week that involve, hey, maybe we could go play a little bit, that's not real. I have no interest in playing in the NFL after watching these guys. So when I think about the players outside of Myles Garrett this year, and you can maybe throw some names in here for offensive linemen that you would just not want to have to deal with for 60, 70, sometimes 80 plays. Right. And I've got a list here of guys that I played against in the league that gave me nightmares, kept me up at night, and then obviously it was even harder to block them. Geno Atkins was one of the first matchups I had in the NFL. Styles make fights, and the style of that fight was definitely in his favor. He was a leverage guy. He was a fire hydrant that could move like a lightning bolt. He had wiggle. He also had the ability to turn anything into a bull rush. Geno Atkins was a mismatch. And then guys like Fletcher Cox, who are bigger than us. Yeah. I mean, Fletcher's bigger than we are. It was like fighting a junkyard dog or like some kind of bull for 4 quarters. It was no fun. So as offensive linemen, we have to run the gauntlet of all the different styles of fights every week. And it's one of the hardest jobs in football. It's one of the most unheralded jobs in football, the interior, because it's a real fight. Then I think about guys today, Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams. The list goes on and on. There's a ton of these guys, Matt Abike, Jalen Carter, and then another lower cut guy, Ed Oliver. Yeah. These dudes are so hard to block. And yeah, some of them aren't as great against the run. It doesn't matter. They don't write stories about these guys in the run game. They write stories about these guys on 3rd and 8 100%. When it's time to pin your ears back and go get your money. That's why they call them money downs, okay? I may earn my money on 1st and 2nd down in the inside zone department. Tackles earn it for the most part on 3rd down. But these guys are absolute killers out there on the defensive line. Who are some of your favorites from the defensive line? And then who are some guys that you would hate to play against on the offensive line?
I mean, you stated it. I mean, Myles Garrett, we were talking about this like on our drive into work today. And we were just saying, like, the crazy thing is Andrew Thomas is a Pro Bowl player. Yep. Like, I don't think people realize how good Andrew Thomas is. And for Myles Garrett to do what he did, being maybe 70%, because he literally had to leave the game like twice. Yep. It's ridiculous. So imagine that at 100%. Like, him bending the edge at 70% is dogging a Pro Bowl tackle. Yes. Him at 100% he's still the only guy. Like, I don't know if people remember when Megatron, Calvin Johnson, literally had a punt vice on him in red zone situations. And for people that don't understand what that is, it's literally 2 corners lined up on you at the line of scrimmage and treating you like you're a gunner on punt.
Yes.
Myles Garrett got that treatment as a pass rusher. He literally motioned to one side, 2 tight ends followed him. He motioned back to the other side, 2 tight ends followed him. The offense had to call timeout because he kept motioning. That's how ridiculous he is. He's an alien. He's not a human being. So without a doubt, Myles Garrett is one of those guys. I think TJ Watt's another guy who's ridiculous coming off the edge.
Got to take his battery out to get him to stop.
I love that you brought in Jalen Carter. I was high on him when he came out. I know people will say this stuff, off the field is why he dropped, but I thought he was a top 5 player in that draft, without a doubt. I think he proved that Sunday versus the New Orleans Saints. Hearing everybody talking trash about him, went out there and dominated the New Orleans Saints offensive line. Going back to some offensive linemen that gave me issues, I want to preface this by saying I feared no O-linemen, but there was a few guys I did respect.
It was a long day at the office.
Marshawn Yonder.
Yeah.
Good Lord, that dude was like a fridge.
Quick set, strong hands, get on you quick.
And then literally played through the echo of the whistle.
Yeah.
Like literally through the echo of the whistle. So I had some real good battles with him. I had the privilege of playing against Lane Johnson and Trent when they were at the top of the game, which I feel like they still are right now, which is ridiculous to even think about. Fun caveat or fun stat, 2017, Lane Johnson only gave up 1 sack. You know who that to? Yeah, boy. They won the Super Bowl.
I got to text him about that. That's incredible.
That was the only sack he gave up. And I also went against young Trent when he was at Washington. Yep. That dude was they called him Silverback for a reason.
I remember.
Straight bully. So, those are some of the dudes. I would say some of the guys now, again, me and Kyle were having a conversation. I was in the iron, paradise, getting my workout in with a few other guys that have retired. And they said, man, the way they're paying these guys, I could probably come out and play 10 to 15 snaps. And then I went and watched Peter Skoronski and J.C. Latham on a double team. I said, nah, I'm comfortable where I'm at right now. Guys like Tristan Wirfs, who played right tackle, that made the switch to left tackle and still didn't give up any sacks. Yeah. People don't understand how much of an athlete he is. For people that, just to give you a visual picture, this dude at 6'5", 330 pounds, jumped out of a swimming pool onto the pavement with water, not with the water in it. You know how explosive you have to be to do that at that size?
What do you do? He had that Iowa hang clean record.
Oh my God.
That's the one that got me. That's the one that got me.
He broke the record and they just did it again.
It was the Rashawn Slater front squat in goggles, in nerd goggles.
That was so funny.
It was the jumping out of the pool.
But that actually speaks to the bigger point that I've seen in the drafts, following it and combine numbers, following it for the past decade plus, is that the guys coming out nowadays are just
aliens.
They're freakish.
They're the training at the lower levels has reached just a different level. You go back to Von Miller, and when he came out, he ran a 4.53 at 246 and had a 10.6 broad jump. Those are at that time, that was that guy's nailing.
Those are
right?
that guy's numbers.
This past year at the combine, 2 guys were heavier, ran faster, and jumped farther than that. Chop Robinson, Dallas Turner. They're just every year there's a few guys. And then so every team is getting these, last year Lucas Van Ness, 272. He runs a 4.58 coming out. It's some of these guys coming out are just unbelievable. And if you're offensive lineman, you're talking about
that Lucas Van Ness.
Your training is at a minimum in terms of the reps you're getting throughout practice. And then you're getting asked to block guys who are just more physically imposing than we've seen at any point during NFL history. And just from a pure size and from speed and explosiveness standpoint, they're under attack, man.
And
there's flat out
there's specialization now within each position too. When I talk about what defensive linemen do to prepare, I always make fun of you guys. I say you're in there building birdhouses. What else could you be doing? But the reality is, you guys have mastered your techniques. I mean, and it's. I used to just think you would just come off the ball and find a way to get home, but there's so much more to it. Guys are working with jiu-jitsu instructors and working boxing and trying to figure out their feet, and they work kicks, and they don't even kick on the field, but they want stronger hips, so they're going to kick. And for offensive linemen now, there's entire training facilities where you can hang the entire offseason and train and get right. So these guys are bigger, faster, stronger, literally.
Yeah. To your point, it's not just about coming off the ball and being more athletic, right? It's a study of angles, pass rush angles. How do I attack this guy's shoulder? Like you said, some guys are working with jiu-jitsu guys just to figure out how to make this guy's shoulder turn this way, just to bend the edge and get around the corner. It's all about
we saw Buddy
angles.
Break Buddy's arm the other day on film.
Paris Johnson broke Marcus Davenport's arm.
Dude, if you watch it, Davenport was going with a long arm.
He
went
chopped it down.
Broke his arm. I mean, this is like they train this stuff now.
Correct.
Coaches used to just say, hey, if they put his hand on you, break his arm. You know, like you break his hand off. These guys are breaking
Literally
each other's
breaking
arms.
it, right?
There's technique.
Drink more milk.
All right. It's a fun conversation because the game is like, it's getting
I
faster.
thought that's why I got hurt, because I stopped drinking milk when I got in the league.
I can't drink milk now. I'm lactose intolerant, sadly. All right, my top head coaching candidates. That's what I wanted to discuss because, well, not going to name names, but you know who you are. Their teams are already kind of in the market.
Yep.
We say. They already have their eyes on the future. And there are already OCs and DCs throughout the NFL making a name for themselves. So I want your guys' take. It's just like, let's say your top two. You got a team in need of a head coach. Who are you looking at right now? And I think it's also an interesting conversation. Do we want an OC right now, or do we want a DC with the way the game's going?
See, I want to present both situations. Do you have somebody in mind for your pairing? Do you have a Amakase ready for these fine folks?
I do, but I think there's another category you got to throw in there, not just the offense guy, defensive guy, a leader of men who's like the overseer, kind of like my guy. And
those are almost always
like Mike
defensive
Tomlin.
guys, though.
Yeah,
defensive guys.
They're usually defensive guys. Well, not in Detroit. Yeah, Dan Campbell's. He's a guy that doesn't call the plays. So
yeah.
That's a leader of men. I mean, you now that I'm thinking about all these brains and people with
you got to
great
think about leaders of men.
But you have to keep in mind, I got drafted in 2013 by Mark Trestman's Chicago Bears. And Mark Trestman, one of the finest minds in offensive football, he stood at the back of the meeting room. And so like team meeting, where does the coach stand? At the front,
so when he held the meeting, he literally was in the
your
back.
coaches stand at the front of the meeting room, at the bottom of the stairs. So Mark Trestman would do it from behind everybody, while on the projector there was, the daily agenda and all that stuff.
Really?
And I called my dad and I'm like, have you ever seen this before? Because this is my first day in the league. I'm like, is this normal? And he's like, Trestman was with Bill Walsh in San Francisco, and that's how he ran his meetings apparently too. Cool. So you got to know who they are. You got to know where they've been.
It's the tree.
And also, you're not going to know how they are as leaders of men until you're around them.
Correct.
So like 10 years ago, if you showed me a picture of LaFleur and said, this guy's an offensive genius, I might say, yeah, but how does he do in front of a bunch of D linemen that are roasting his ass for the way his pants fit or something like that? You have to find the right guy. And for me, you have to find a guy that can get the most out of your players, right, in your situation. And I think about a team like, say, Chicago. Okay, I'm not going to say they should get rid of Eberflus. I don't want to call for anybody's job this early in the season. But let's just say they make that move. You know what I'm saying?
Let's just say.
You need to bring in somebody to maximize your number one pick. You need an offensive-minded head coach. And you need to find the best coordinator that you can for the defense. And they've got a great defense. They've got great guys in play. Maybe, have you ever seen a head coach step down? Have you ever seen a head coach step down and become a DC? I think I could see it happening. Chicago would probably have him because they love his defense. But I think you have to bring in an offensive head coach. And for a team like Dallas, we've talked about this, if it is McCarthy, if they struggle down the stretch like they have at the beginning, it has to be a Bill Belichick hire, because Jerry Jones can then appease his fan base that has, if the section of his fan base that has no football knowledge, they're just like, well, they signed the best coach ever. He did his job. Jerry Jones brought in the right guy. And then from a football standpoint, your team's going to get better because you hire Bill Belichick. There's going to be less infighting. There's going to be more maximization of the talent on your roster. In my opinion, I feel like that's the value of a head coach, and that's the value of a guy like Belichick. And then also you get a masterful scheme if you hire an offensive coordinator anywhere.
Yeah, well, I think the OCDC game manager, or not team manager, sort of like the debate there. If between OC and DC, I just want innovative, right? I want a guy, because when someone's doing something different and it's working, that was like Belichick's thing throughout his history. He always had the game plan like that work. When someone's doing that, you have to understand both sides of football, right? Like you understand offense. You have to understand offense in depth to then have a defense that's complementary enough to shut down those offenses. So I just want that guy who knows
hire a tight end. Because tight ends do run game, pass game, coverage. It makes sense.
So for that perspective, Brian Flores, I think, is doing innovative things. Correct. In this case, and obviously leader of men. Are you kidding me? Like, that guy has that, what did he say? I was born, put on this earth to coach the game of football. Like he is that. So I think
that sounds pretty cool, huh?
It does.
Bill Belichick are probably the top two. And Belichick, I still trust to coach the defense side of the football. It's just, can he give up all the other stuff that went so
That's
awry
the question.
in New England? Because it did go awry. Like flat out, his evaluation of players his past 5 to 6 years there was poop. It was some of the worst in the NFL. And the free agency decisions they were making were not good. So I do think that's the biggest thing with him. I would probably put those the top two. After that, offensively, I mean, remains to be seen. Clint Kubiak, Ben Johnson are probably the two guys that I've seen do like different things that I'm intrigued by.
I like Ben Johnson.
Joe Brady and what he's doing with Buffalo could get looks.
Ben Johnson
but
had an opportunity. He just hasn't
so early.
Yeah.
True. And then Mike Vrabel, if we're going back to leaders of men, Vrabel's still on the sideline, leader of men. But yeah, I think
if you had to pair any of these coaches, like if you had to,
so you're firing coaches right now.
So again,
if where would this is less about the team that they're replacing the coach of, and more about this exercise, just finding out where.
So if Eberflus would put him back at DC, which I think he has to grow the beard out if you put him back at DC. Okay. You can't have the trim cloth beard as a DC.
Van Joseph was the head coach at Denver, and he went back as a DC.
See, like
it wasn't the same.
It wasn't the same right away. But
this could be something.
So I think the pairing I like the most for OC to quarterback is obviously the Jacksonville Jaguars, the one that's who we're thinking of. It's a team that's 0-3. I like Clint Kubiak to that offense. I think they just need an identity. Flat out, you watch their games, and there is not much of one.
Flood.
Yeah,
Flood.
It's tough. It's hardly an identity. That's an identity in Halo 3, but not in the NFL. That's the one I like for, if we are saying the Chicago Bears, and an offensive mind for them. I think Ben Johnson would be the one.
That's what I'm saying. I like that. Is he going
to ever leave?
But is he going to ever leave?
I got buddies in Chicago who like really want this Ben Johnson character.
He's had like 2 years in a row to leave, and he just hasn't done it. I mean, I think a guy that we left off this list that was one of the hottest OCs last year, Bobby Slowick.
Yeah,
Bobby from Houston Texans,
and they were able to
retain the tree, him. Right? Look at the tree, the Shanahan tree, and how it's had a lot of success. Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur, like all these guys have had success. And Slowick comes from that tree. So I think owners will take that into consideration because, like, we've seen pupils leave that, that staff.
Yes, yeah.
The Miko, like, we throw him on the defense side, even but he was under Kyle Shanahan, like, and have had success. Like,
talk about a leader.
I mean, it's the most successful tree in like modern NFL history. It's not
maybe
even
ever.
Close. Truly, like every single, whether it's McVay came from that, whether it's LaFleur came from that, even Zach Taylor kind of in an ancillary way.
Kevin O'Connell, technically.
Kevin O'Connell, yeah.
McVay,
so like the downstream effects from that tree are
that's how he made
everywhere
Slowick look so bad. We think it was Flores, but it was really KOC.
He knew how to attack the offense.
He's like, I know which questions he got wrong in the meeting. So we're going to get on his ass.
I'm too close to Bobby, though. Good friend of mine back from PFF days, so
Sorry,
I can't gas him up too much. But
we love you, Bobby.
But he'll get head coach looks for sure.
Bobby, you need a big tight end? Bobby?
Extra lineman.
Come on.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get to your guys' mailbag questions.
A Quiet Place Day 1 is now streaming on Paramount Plus. It's thrilling, terrifying. It will make your heart pound out of your chest. A Quiet Place Day 1, now streaming.
All right, first mailbag question here comes from M. Beal.
Did we figure out who this guy is at the bottom of the mailbag?
We still haven't.
We don't know who this guy is.
I love the mail.
Okay, who's the first mailbag? Thanks for the reviews and all the mailbags.
M. Beal 13 says, how has Cliff's offense evolved since Arizona? Does he trust Jaden more than he did Kyler?
Ooh.
Early on, the second part of that question, I mean, like, no. I think like Kyler later years versus Jaden right now, it's simplistic compared. Like there's a lot of RPOs, a lot of screens. Like it just flat out, that's how you get a quarterback involved in the NFL.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like we're not breaking any ground here. And truthfully, I mean, like the reason they were so high on Jaden Daniels is because he is exceptional at RPOs. Now RPOs are like, they get a bad rap because Chris Collinsworth won't stop talking about him on Sunday Night Football. And everyone gets annoyed when he's misidentified RPOs. And it's like, yeah, people are sick about hearing about him, but they're efficient offensive football when you have a guy like Jaden Daniels who's so accurate, such a good decision maker in those 1 to 2, reads so fast, and has that rushing threat that forces the linebacker into a bind. That like it can make it look like
that too. It's like
a true running option. And if it's a running option with Jaden Daniels, you better have your eyes on him, or else that play could go to the house. So he's exceptional at him. it's going to be a part of their offensive scheme for forever. So he's doing a lot more of that, and it's going to continue even when, because Kyler Murray on those RPOs is looking over the line of scrimmage when you're 5'8", 5'9", 5'10". I'm giving him not enough height here, but like looking over the line of scrimmage of that guy and having to read that second level defender is just not going to be as quick at it, not quite as good at it as a 6'4" guy like Jaden Daniels is. So going to be a big part of their offense. But I think the biggest thing I've seen, he's already moving Terry McLaurin around. He already played him more snaps in the slot, more snaps, not just 100%. At left wide receiver, his X, because it's a true defined position in his offense, than he ever did in any single game of DeAndre Hopkins' career. Right there. Evolution, willing to put his playmakers in a better position to make plays. I do think you've seen differences, but it's still so early and it's still so simplistic that we're really not getting into Cliff's bag, so to speak. We'll see what happens when he gets there. But like the fact that they're scoring without having to is such an indictment of how good Jaden Daniels is at this early date that I'm not sure you even, it's like, some guys supersede their OCs. That, some guys need the good OCs. Some guys are making their OCs look good. Jaden Daniels thinks the type of talent that can make his OC look good.
And to your point, essentially they're finally treating Terry McLaurin like a true number one. This was the issue for CeeDee Lamb in Dallas for his first couple of years, right? They were stagnant and keeping him on one side of the field or the other. You can't do that with number ones anymore. It's too easy to defend them in regards to rolling coverage, bracket coverage, right? Also, like getting hands on them in the line of scrimmage. You have to move your number one guy to get those advantageous, matchups to get him the football. And I was so glad that I saw what you saw, Mike, in regards to moving him around and then being able to threaten the ball down the field. I mean, Terry McLaurin has been probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the league. He's played with so many different quarterbacks, and every year he still goes over 1,000 yards. Like, he is a true number one, and they finally treated him like that versus Cincinnati. And I'm looking forward to seeing, like you said, Cliff getting his bag even more and moving him around and Jaden building that rapport, because before, like you said, Jaden processes so quickly on RPO. A lot of it is screen game. Like, he knows exactly where to go with the football. So it's not like he's like, I got to get my number one the ball. Like, this is what they play. This is the read. This is where I'm going with the football. Now there's intent to get Terry McLaurin the ball. And who knows, with the way that Jaden processes his athletic ability that you talked about, like, this offense can be, and this is why I had them, one, he was my preseason offensive rookie of the year, and two, why I had them as a dark horse winning 8 to 9 games and maybe sneaking into the playoffs, just because I knew he was different than every other quarterback in this draft. So with Cliff Kingsbury, I thought it was the perfect match because of like what Mike said. It was what he did in college. He was comfortable doing it. Now it's all about just adding a little bit more tidbits to make this offense truly explosive.
I think, we heard Cam Taylor-Britt say this is just a college offense. Offense. Dude, if it is, so what? These guys can play fast.
Colleges put up points too.
They can play very fast when it's a simple offense. And I remember when we would get our install list against a team, and I knew we had 4 nickel runs, and we had 1 play action pass and 1 screen. I was like, oh my God, I can play so fast this week. Correct. I don't have to think about checks. I don't have to think about remiking things. And for a young quarterback, all you can ask is the opportunity to go play loose and fast.
For sure.
And with a guy like Jaden Daniels, you just want him to be him and let him be him. So they give him opportunities to do that, and he's dancing and everybody's dancing.
Playing with Daniels and with Nix, I think we're seeing kind of like something we see in research, the guys with experience. Those guys played 5 years. They have the first and second, Nix is first, Daniels second, most starts in college football history. It's like that helps when you get to the NFL. When you've kind of seen it all already, and when you've seen a lot of these looks, those are the guys that are more often than not the guys who can play
a little bit slower. The game slows down. My dad always explained it like this, and Dad played 13 years, but he said there's 2 elevators. You get in the NFL, your league intelligence is like 0, and your physical capabilities are at 10 in terms of like, this is like your fuel tank physically. And as you play a little bit, you see things, and this elevator starts to move. And at a certain point, they stop moving at the rate that they were moving before. And this one plummets. And wherever this mental is, that's going to carry you through those last couple of years. And for guys like Jaden, guys like Bo, they've got that mental elevator up there early by the time they get in the NFL. And it shows, because the other guys in the league that are rookies at times can not look as confident as these two.
All right, next question here. MVM Football says, are we at the end of the Peterson era in Jacksonville? And if so, who can come build a functional offense around Trevor? Well, I just gave my take on that in terms of Clint Kubiak, thinking he'd be a good fit there in terms of just adding an identity to this offense, and obviously giving them some like play action shots when you have someone like Brian Thomas, who is objectively nasty in those sort of situations. And then that's kind of where Trevor wins as well, as those downfield routes. So
yes, and Kubiak.
And yes, this is I think the question.
I wouldn't even mind slow there either.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think though, offensive mind,
fix Trevor,
give in,
good Lord.
And it's not just the end of the Peterson era. I think we're at the end of the Balky era as well.
Ooh, we should get Pete to talk about that.
And for GM there, I'll put my hand.
I was about to say, is that yeah, we're talking about the head coach. I'm like, is the GM in trouble too?
Yeah, I probably should be, unfortunately. All right, next question up here. How can the Colts replicate Josh Allen's development in accuracy? With AR.
This, Mike.
Are his flaws fixable, or are the Colts eternally cursed at QB for cutting Peyton Manning? They're fixable. There's a worry, though, is one I haven't seen much progress from last year to this year. Let's get to Josh Allen. I actually went deep on this question last night. I was telling you guys before. I saw this question, and I was like, I've watched some Tom House podcasts about throwing mechanics, and I've done like some research on this over the course of the offseason, but I never actually put it into play because I just listen to podcasts offhandedly a lot, and then I don't end up thinking about them ever again. But I did hear, because you gave me this opportunity, two biggest things with Anthony Richardson that I see, and I'll relate it to how Josh Allen developed. Josh Allen was very much like a baseball thrower coming out. And when you're a baseball thrower, you have this big stride, and usually you tend to stride at your target. Those two things, when you do have a big stride, and I see that with Anthony Richardson, he gets to the back of his drops, and he is tight with his feet. You see Josh Allen at the back of his drops, his feet land either at shoulder width or outside of shoulder width. When you have that base, and Tom House says this, he's the pitching and throwing godfather in terms of mechanics, in terms of biomechanics and how actually the throwing motion should work. He says that a wide neutral base and a centered ball position is something that every quarterback should have at the top of their drop. Not necessarily wide neutral base, but that every quarterback should practice consistently just when they are, throwing on their own, throwing practice, because that develops when you are neutral and have even weight, and you can throw from that. That develops the muscle memory to then be more accurate when you don't have that neutral base. It's something that you can go back to. And when I see Anthony Richardson, he gets real tight with his feet at the back end of his drop, and then he has to stride out.
Like a pitcher.
So you get a stride
in the
from
stretch. Like imagine a pitcher coming out of the stretch.
Yeah. So you get like this little stride from him. And when you're striding, when you go, and especially for taller guys, this is big. When you go from that tight feet to a wide feet, you actually will drop. Your head will go down. And when you're doing that, because and for he says every 1 inch of head movement, it's 2 inches of release angle movement. And that's why you see these sky balls from a guy like Anthony Richardson, because of that stride.
He's dropping and launching.
Correct.
And his head will go down and you'll launch up. And so you see a lot of that from him. From like a pure arm perspective, it's awesome. And he trusts it a lot. A lot of those bigger guys really will throw a lot with just arm.
Correct.
And not use their hips. And that's the other biggest thing I saw with him. So the base at the top can be more consistent. The problem is, again, I haven't seen any change from last year to this year in that base, in getting more consistent with it, when he literally had all offseason to just work on his footwork. He couldn't even throw. So not working on that, not improving on that is a little worrisome for me. But then he also, when he throws, if you watch guys like Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, they'll go from that wide base. And when they're stepping, so Richardson steps towards the target, opens up towards target. When you're stepping to throw, you watch those guys, they step out left. It's out left because when you're throwing, you want to clear your hips as fast as possible. You want them pointing to the target before your shoulders get to point at the target. Because when you throw accurately, everything, your shoulders, arm will be aligned at where you're throwing. And so if your shoulders aren't to your target just yet, you have to make up for all that in a split second. But if your hips are wide open, and if you watch Aaron Rodgers throw, he is the GOAT at this, his hips open up immediately. And that's why he generates so much force as a thrower, is because he has flipped the hips while his arm is way back here. He's already pointed directly at his target with his hips, and then just everything catches up right at the last second. With Anthony Richardson, strides at the target, and so he won't clear his hips until the last second. So it really is using a lot of his arm, and he has a cannon for an arm. But that's how you see on that one bomb, you go back to week 1, bomb to Alec Pierce. What did he do on that throw? He was completely open. That was an accurate throw because his left foot was all the way back. Yeah. And that was, his best throw of the season. So if I was him, I would watch Aaron Rodgers. I would watch Justin Herbert. I would watch Josh Allen and work on that front leg stride and just clearing wide open. You have such a cannon for an arm. Just put yourself in a better body mechanics position. So those two things, when I watch him, that's where he gets in trouble. He will get that stride and he'll get it too close to the target and he won't be able to clear his hips in time. And it's just all arm then. And he's too reliant on it. And again, Josh Allen looked like that year 1, looked like that a little bit less year 2. By year 3, he was that base at the top of his drop, hips wide open to clear first. And then it also helps you in your off-platform accuracy, as I said with Tom House. When you get that consistency, you're better off-platform as well. So that's what I recommend.
That was a great breakdown.
Yeah, it was.
Clap it up for Mike a little bit.
Thank you.
Go, Mike.
But like I said, I thought it was
Pushing
very
the
interesting.
pigskin.
And it's
It's
something that, so if you are,
that Dak Wilmot.
yes, that is how
That's Tom House.
you want. Yes. Yeah. You got to clear the hips. That's him clearing his hips and rotating his shoulders back, getting that separation that helps you get power, but
That's
then it
his
also
sensei.
helps you throw
Tom
accurately.
House is a sensei.
So if I was, talking to Anthony Richardson, I'd say go work with Tom House.
Yeah.
He needs like that. And
is the universe ready for the dominance that would be Anthony Richardson that could throw strikes?
because I do think he's because the arm is amazing. Like the arm from
It's
just that
ridiculous.
perspective is so darn good. If he just got the rest to be consistent, he wouldn't be, I'm not saying he's going to be Josh Allen from an accuracy perspective, but he would be serviceable. True. Like he's not too far off. So there is hope. That's a long way of saying there definitely is hope with him.
I'll get this one. Grafting Diamond. Is the gap between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes bigger or smaller than the gap between Josh Allen and QB3? I would say that right now, I'm not sure there is a gap between these two guys. If we're talking in terms of performance, in terms of
You mean just from this season?
in terms of right now, okay? Patrick Mahomes is my buddy. All right, I love the
I
Chiefs.
get what you're saying.
I didn't pick the Bills to be a Super Bowl contender this year, and I'm eating my words. What I'm saying is right now,
Are you? It's only 3 games.
Josh, but I mean, God, they are just a rolling ball of.
And they have a gauntlet these next 5. We'll learn about the Bills.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
But Josh Allen, the way he makes the game look easy, looks to me like the way that Patrick makes the game look easy. Now, they're different styles of play, but what I see is 2 kids that are 13 playing in the Little League is really what I see. And Patrick hasn't been Patrick this year.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is if you didn't see,
But in terms of greatness,
Patrick's
achievements, and I want to make sure that our producer Harry doesn't cut this because I know how he does this. I want to make sure that people understand it's like the gap right now, week 4 in the NFL. I'm not sure there is a gap, but you think historically, Patrick is obviously
again. If you didn't see 3 rings on Patrick's hand and just watch the tape from the beginning of last year,
that's a good way to put
it. You would say Josh Allen has played better. You just would.
It's a good way to put it.
So. I don't think there's.
But you can't say that.
You can't say it and not get handcuffed and beat up a little bit by Twitter.
To your point, Josh has played out of his mind, right? I wondered how this offense would look without a true number 1 receiver. I knew Joe Brady would really rely on the offensive line and they'd run the ball more. This is one of the best run blocking offensive lines in all of football. And I think he would take some pressure off of Josh, but it's like, even then, when they do that, it's like Josh is off script and his ability to find the matchups, to find Shakir one-on-one. We even saw Keon Coleman, run away. People were running with his speed, 4.61. He ran away from the DB.
He had a buddy holding his pocket.
And literally, you talked about it earlier, ball placement, right? And Josh Allen is putting the ball where guys can catch it and run after it. And I think that's where he's really ascended this year in regards to that accuracy that you were talking about earlier, Mike. His ball placement, whether it's from the pocket or off platform, is ridiculous. Like we know in the red zone, he's going to run the football. For some reason, defenses don't know it. I don't get it. Like the dude, he's going to run the ball in the red zone. Like
if he doesn't like his first 1.5
I'd rather him. We always had a rule on defense. Don't let him run it in. I'd rather him throw 100 touchdowns in the red zone than let the quarterback run it in. Like, if you haven't seen the Bills play, Josh Allen, there's an uptick on him getting carries in the red zone. For guys that are about to play him, he's going to run the ball in the red zone. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. He's probably the biggest back in the league.
Keep your rush alive, contain type rush.
You contain type rush him in the red zone. You don't try to get on the edge and win. Like you make him beat you in the pocket. I mean, you want to get pushed, right? To make him uncomfortable in the pocket, and you don't want to rush scared. But you also need to be cognizant of them using quarterback draw or him. That first, second read's not there. Him taking off with the football, right? You just have to be cognizant of that. But like the throws that he's made the last 2 games, whether it's Miami, even though he didn't throw for a lot of yards, it was just the accuracy he threw.
The Shakir ball in stride.
Oh, my God. Just ridiculous for Jacksonville on Monday night. Literally, I'm not sure he might have had a perfect passer rating or close to it in that game. But like we were saying earlier, he has a gauntlet coming up. I believe he has the Ravens, the Texans, the Seahawks, and the Jets 4 out of the next 5. And all 4 of those teams are on the road. So we'll learn a lot about this Bills team. Again, grade A, first 3 weeks. They look like real Super Bowl contenders, but we'll learn a lot about them in the next
I got a mailbag question real quick, if we have time.
Let's hear it.
How early is too early to put up Halloween decorations?
Oh,
probably already have them up by now.
Okay, good, because we put ours up last night.
It's Halloween.
It's spooky as hell in my house.
A month and a half.
When I first met my fiance, her place was decorated for Halloween year round. So,
Okay.
So she would not.
I support
She would
this.
not tell you too early. All right.
Wednesday Addams.
Which surprise 3-0 team is for real? Vikings, Seahawks, or Steelers? This comes from Russell Smith on Twitter.
I'm glad. I'm glad he didn't actually ask about the Chiefs. You know who I'm gonna pick. Seattle Seahawks.
I'm going to say the Vikings.
I'm picking the Seattle Seahawks.
I get a feeling about this Kevin O'Connell coach team that they're going to continue to make this run.
Yeah.
And people are going to be, kind of sold on the Vikings maybe by week 10. They're going to be talking about a Sam Darnold-led team like we talked about the first time that Brock Purdy made his run as a legitimate team, a legitimate contender.
Yeah, if we're saying for real as in they're hoisting the Lombardi and I'm not surprised, I think Vikings are the one where I'm like, I can see it. I can see it right now. When you have that good of wide receivers, and they really haven't even had Jordan Addison this year,
which is crazy,
in the mix. We have that good of wide receivers, those caliber of tackles. And I know their interior is rough, but their tackles are good.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then what they've done defensively against top offenses. It's truly the best offenses in the NFL to do what they're doing. Yeah, that's scary. So the Seahawks, I think I'd put it in that order in terms of how surprised I'd be. I don't think I'd be surprised. I do just worry about this offensive line. And again, haven't played anyone that really puts me into that. I feel good about them contending with top contenders guys for sure. Steelers just offensively, they'll run into someone they have to put up points on the board with in the playoffs. Just flat out, your defense is great. Are you going to shut down the Bills, the Chiefs, and then say
it can't be a baseball game every
the 49ers, right? Are you going to do that for Thursday games?
The playoffs last year doing it.
So I trust that all 3 of those teams, I'm betting make the playoffs right now. I think all 3 of them will.
And all 3 would have probably, in the beginning of the season, nobody was saying all 3 of those would have made the playoffs at all.
Yeah. So all 3 I'd bet to make playoffs, but I think the Vikings have the best chance.
I will say this about the Vikings. Mike, you know this. Kyle, you played a long time. You know this. Usually when there's a new quarterback, right, usually the first 3 weeks, teams don't have proper film on him. Now, again, Sam Darnold's playing out of his mind.
And he's first 3 weeks with the Panthers.
Exactly.
Remember.
He looked really good at the Panthers. We'll see. I think they have the Packers this week. That would be a good test with Jeff Halfley and the way that defensive line can get after.
Is it in Minnesota or
it's in Green Bay?
It's in Green Bay. And then they play the Jets in London. Yeah. So, this is usually around the time after guys been on fire the first 3 weeks. Okay, we got proper film work on them. Let's see if he can make
got Mike feeling nicey.
I'm feeling nicey.
Did you see the John Gruden video? Did you see this John Gruden video?
No.
So John Gruden apparently made a TikTok, and we did a video on it last week where he's talking about Joe Mixon or something. He's just gritting his teeth at his desk. He loves Joe Mixon, and he's listening to the dubstep. And at one point, he's like, "This Joe Mixon guy's got me feeling nicey, man."
Oh yeah, actually I did see that.
I did some research. The song is by his son. His son does
and he's wearing a T-shirt. Hex.
Really?
Yeah.
John Gruden marketing. Okay.
All right. Next question. Matthew or Matt?
Okay.
Mount Rushmore of breakfast foods.
This is my buddy Matthew or Matt, he's a Twitch buddy of mine. We played a lot of video games together. Stayed at my house. Thanks for watching the show and listening, Matt. You're the homie. I look forward to seeing you again. Breakfast foods. Mike has some interesting ones. I'm gonna let him go first.
Yeah,
you're gonna make
breakfast foods.
So I said a combination is a sandwich with stuff on it is a food. It's not just one item.
You led with a drink on your list.
Okay, my first thing is cold brew.
Cold brew coffee.
That is, I love coffee. I drink it every day, specifically cold brew. And most days, that's my breakfast. Most days, I'm just a coffee and I'm waiting till lunch. So
ice.
That's on
iced coffee.
Ice is the food, I guess.
Avocado toast. up there too.
That's a good one.
Cinnamon Pop-Tarts. I'd probably consume more cinnamon Pop-Tarts than anyone else in the world.
Pop-Tarts and avocados.
From 2005, 2008, I used to eat a zillion of those. And then a bacon, egg, and cheese breakfast sandwich on an English muffin.
I'm not mad about that.
English muffins, the GOAT breakfast sandwich. Bread.
Matt, this morning I went to a place called the Boca Bagel Bar and Deli. I picked up an everything bagel, and they call it the Bobo sandwich. It's bacon, hash browns, egg and cheese, and I put cream cheese on it too.
Oh, you're psycho.
The full gambit,
buddy.
It was different.
It's incredible.
I'd have to take a nap.
So go get the Bobo with cream cheese. It's awesome. But I wrote for mine. It's got to be chocolate chip pancakes.
Okay.
It's got to be 2 eggs with cheese with some hot sauce. And I want to do the whole package of bacon. I want half of it to be half of it extra crispy, and I cut it in half too. Yeah. So it's a bunch of little pieces.
Correct.
I go half of it super crispy, like crunchy, and then the other half, like, is this cooked enough? That's what I want.
A little rubbery.
That's my breakfast.
So I'm with Mike. I'm a big bet guy, but instead of English muffin, I'm a croissant guy. Like a nice croissant on a bacon, egg, and cheese.
What?
Decadent.
It reminds you of the facility?
Bro,
being at the facility,
bro. When the chef knows your order.
How do you want it today?
Hey, chef knows your order.
You got weigh-ins today.
Exactly.
2-on-1.
After Friday's weigh-in, breakfast sandwich heading straight to the calf.
I used to see guys put jelly on their breakfast sandwiches. Did you see that? At the facility?
Yeah,
what is up with those psychopaths?
You see definitely off.
Okay.
And then I'm a big breakfast taco guy as well.
Oh, yeah.
Good breakfast taco.
I need to get around some.
You can do eggs, potatoes, or you can do eggs, bacon, like
because breakfast burritos are everywhere.
Yeah,
they don't just have like open breakfast tacos out there.
Correct. Breakfast tacos is life changing.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
How many? Is it 4 presidents?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was 4. I thought it was 5.
All right. Next question here. It's not even really a question. It's just a demand. No, it is. Can we get Mike to do a scouting report on Kyle as if he was an opposing coach, and Kyle to do one on Mike if hypothetically Mike had played football in the NFL?
Ooh.
That's a big hypothetical right there, by the way.
What position? Receiver?
Slot receiver. You kidding me? Where else could this body type survive?
I would say Mike does a great job recognizing coverages pre-snap. He's cool as a cucumber in times of stress, and he's the ultimate competitor. We got to work on his diet a little bit. He's a little wishy-washy. Sometimes I see him eating Pop-Tarts. Sometimes I see him eating bowls of avocados and stuff. I think I look at a guy like Mike, and there's a number of routes that I can think of at the tip of my tongue here. I'm thinking, 5-yard hitches. I'm thinking a little double moves. I'm thinking a lot of double moves.
I used to be able to go up and get it. I used to be able to jump back in the day.
You're like the guy from the Hunter Renfro. Like I see a little bit of Renfro action.
I thought body type wise, Jared Abbrederis. You remember Jared Abbrederis?
Jared Abbrederis.
I had like the same body type as Jared Abbrederis. He came out, he was 6 foot, 180. Maybe like a 4.53 or something. I feel like if I really had trained, that would have been like that could have been me.
What's the receiver? Ohio State? Was it like Brian Hartline?
Hartline.
Yeah.
Brian Hartline's a dog, though.
Yeah. Edelman, we get you on some protein and some creatine.
I don't think I had the
juice. Edelman territory.
They would have taken.
We got to get you on the.
They would have taken TRT to get me there.
There you go.
All right, my scout report
stands for TRT.
Testosterone replacement therapy.
Oh, testosterone. Okay.
All right, for Kyle, O-line are well coached. Got to alert 6th and 7th O-line packages. Those are going to come. Struggles to adjust when the running game is shut down. Just keeps pounding the rock. Can bait him into personal fouls if you talk bad about Caleb Williams.
True.
Steal nicotine pouches out of his locker and his play calling is going to go sideways.
True. That's why I keep an extra can in my sock. I actually used to, at practice, I wore tall socks and I would wear like the dip in my socks.
I know a lot of O-linemen have done that.
That's the way to go. That's the way to go. That's a good scouting report.
Watch
the extra O-line page.
I'm a scout.
Get as many fatties on the field as possible.
All
right, last question here from Matrix FPL says, how do you guys see things playing out with Malik Willis going forward in Green Bay? Obviously, Love is locked in as QB1, but do Green Bay look to use Willis in certain goal line situations? Looking longer term, could GB turn around that 7th round pick into a 3rd or 4th rounder? Thanks. 2 QB stuff I'm always intrigued by. Now, no one's really done it well. I think, who was it? Coastal Carolina? Who was doing 2 QB stuff? Kansas, maybe? Someone in the college football ranks was doing some 2 quarterback stuff that was interesting.
North Carolina was doing a little bit of it.
That was actually like the first time I saw where it was like they would run maybe like a sweep pitch to a quarterback, and then he would still be able to throw. I think with LaFleur in the NFL, no one's going to want to be that guy to try it first. So I doubt we see it from them. But if you're the Packers,
you're ecstatic.
Exactly. You just gave up a 7th rounder for a guy who won 2 games for you and who outplayed, 2 quarterbacks
who the fans love.
Yes. And who's a great guy who has obviously worked on his game from year 1 to year 3 now. You've seen gobs of improvement. And he's incredibly physically gifted. He has a cannon. He can run. Develop him till the end of the road, in my opinion. Take all the way. So you have the rest of this year. You have his 4th year. And then from there, obviously, like, you're praying he doesn't have to play again with Jordan Love staying healthy that entire time. But maybe there's some blowouts and he comes in, he still looks good. After that, if there's he's looked good enough and he's dominated preseason, whatever, maybe you could tag and trade situation. Who knows? Worst case scenario, and you don't think you're going to do that, maybe deal him at the deadline next year. But I think you just keep him, ride it out, and if he walks somewhere and gets paid a lot of money, you get that compensatory 3rd rounder.
The only way you trade him next year is if you literally get like a 2nd round pick. Because what if you're in the same scenario again? And, and we've seen too many teams be in this. Look at the Chargers right now. Like, if Justin Herbert can't go,
who can get us some points?
Like, who's going to win them games? Tyler Heineke? Is it going to be Easton Stick? Like, that's the issue for a lot of teams. That's why the Jets spend as much as they did on Tyrod Taylor, just in case Aaron Rodgers goes down.
Such a smart.
You need somebody You need somebody to steer the ship until your captain can come back. So, like, to your point, Mike, continue to develop them. Now, if somebody comes knocking and says, maybe a 3rd round, 2nd round, nothing less than that. 4th rounder, it's not worth it because you need a backup quarterback.
I only had a few things in my career that you would consider to be a successful part of it, and one of them was playing with good backup quarterbacks. We didn't win a lot of games ever. No Super Bowls, like rarely playoffs, but we always had good backup quarterbacks. I remember Josh McCown. Every time he would come in, and just like the understanding that if something happened to our first guy, we had somebody that could go put up 350 yards and we wouldn't be surprised by it. Correct. And then in Kansas City, I think about Chad Henne when he was there and the value that gave the Chiefs. I remember there was a play he came in and had to roll out right on a 4th and 1 and making that big completion. Like, you need a playmaker. You need to keep them on retainer. And for the Packers, pay him for as long as you can pay him when his deal is up, because that thing is going to be doubly expensive in 5 years.
For sure.
So get it taken care of right after this deal is done.
And Malik Willis, I've had to take for a while that I want my backup quarterback to run below a 4.6. I want my backup quarterback to be a threat in the
dynamic,
because that's that's the first way you can keep your offense on track and score points to the backup, is to have your running game just roll people. To have that option in your offense.
Extra
that guy can do stuff. For that perspective, Malik is super dynamic as a runner, and I think more teams should probably covet those guys as backups because, as we saw, he was there for 2 weeks and they won a football game because they just pounded the rock. So it's a way to win that if you throw in a Taylor Heineke, you're just he's not doing much for that running game there in LAC, and they're just going to load boxes on him when he is a starter. So, all right, there you have it. Fun show. Thanks for all your questions. As always, if you want a question for sure answered, you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with your question. We will answer it, or just hit us up on Twitter. We'll answer most of them. We'll try to get to all your guys' questions. Until next time.
Holla.
Keep pushing.
Thanks, Leger.